I never thought I'd be in a situation like this, especially with him. She looked at me from the ground, her ankle twisted, her breath short, and whispered words I'll never forget. It's because of you. I froze in the middle of the trail, the sound of birds and the steady rhythm of my own heartbeat fading behind that sentence. I bent down, confused, asking, "Why? What do you mean?" But she closed her eyes for a second, almost as if she regretted saying it, and shook her head. That was the morning everything began. I never thought a simple jog around the neighborhood would pull me into someone else's hidden world. My name is Liam Carter. I'm 24, the kind of guy who's still figuring out his place in the world. I work part-time at a warehouse while finishing my classes in business. Nothing fancy, nothing special. My apartment is small. My fridge usually empty except for milk and a half-open jar of peanut butter. But I've got time. And I've always believed life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. She was one of those surprises. Her name is Grace Harper, 37, my neighbor across the street. I'd seen her dozens of times before, walking her dog in the evenings, carrying groceries with that calm, graceful way of moving that made her stand out from everyone else in our block. She had this quiet elegance about her, as if she didn't belong to the street filled with rusty mailboxes and cracked sidewalks. Yet somehow she fit right in. That morning, I noticed her running ahead of me. I didn't even realize she was a runner until then. She had a rhythm, a determination in her steps. And for some reason, I started pushing myself to keep up with her. Maybe it was my ego, maybe just curiosity, or maybe something deeper I didn't want to admit. I caught up almost shoulder to shoulder, and when she glanced at me, there was a spark of competitiveness in her eyes. Then it happened. Her foot hit a loose stone. She stumbled, and before I could react, she was on the ground. I rushed to her side, my hands shaking as I tried to help her up. That's when she whispered those words. "It's because of you." I didn't know if she meant the stumble or something else entirely. I helped her sit on the bench near the path. She tried to wave me off, insisting she was fine, but I could see the pain in her face. "Let me walk you home," I said. She hesitated, then nodded almost reluctantly. The walk back was strangely silent at first. She limped slightly, leaning on me, and I felt the weight of her trust in that simple gesture. I wanted to ask what she had meant, why she had said those words, but her expression told me not to push. Instead, I told her about myself, how I moved to this neighborhood 2 years ago, how I was still chasing stability in my life. To my surprise, she listened, really listened. Her blue eyes fixed on me as if my ordinary struggles mattered. When we reached her house, she thanked me softly. Her voice had that calm strength, the kind that makes you feel safe even in an awkward moment. "You should be more careful," she said with the faintest smile, as if turning the blame back on me for running too close. I laughed nervously, not sure what to reply. Before stepping inside, she pulled out her phone. As she unlocked the door, I heard her whisper into it, her back to me. "He doesn't know anything yet." I stood frozen on her porch, the words echoing in my mind. I didn't know who she was talking to or what I wasn't supposed to know. All I knew was that from that morning on, my life was no longer as simple as a jog around the block. For the rest of that day, her words haunted me. He doesn't know anything yet. Who was she talking about? And what didn't I know? I tried to convince myself it was nothing, just a private call I overheard by accident. But the truth is, once you catch a glimpse of someone's secret, you can't unsee it. The next morning, I saw her again. She was on her porch, ankle-wrapped, holding a cup of coffee. I thought about ignoring her, pretending I hadn't heard anything, but my feet carried me across the street before my mind could stop them. She looked up, surprised, then softened. "You again?" she said. I smiled awkwardly and asked how her ankle was. She invited me inside, maybe out of politeness, maybe because she didn't want to stand there in the cool morning air. Her living room was warm, filled with books and framed photos. A younger Grace Harper with a man who looked proud but distant. A wedding picture. Another photo with her dog. No recent pictures with anyone else. It told me a story she hadn't said out loud. We sat at her table and I found myself rambling about work, School. Nothing important. She listened with that same quiet focus as before. Finally, she leaned back, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You remind me of someone I used to know," she said. Her tone was soft, almost wistful. Before I could ask who, the front door opened. A man stepped in, tall, older, wearing a pressed shirt like he owned the place. His eyes landed on me, then narrowed. "Who's this?" he asked sharply. Grace Harper stiffened. "A neighbor," she answered. "He helped me yesterday when I hurt my ankle." The man looked at me the way a predator looks at prey. "You don't need kids hanging around here," he said. My stomach tightened, but I forced a smile, pretending his words didn't sting. Grace Harper tried to calm him, her voice steady but tense. I excused myself, not wanting to cause a scene. But as I stepped outside, I heard him mutter, "You really don't know when to stop, do you?" The rest of the week, I kept noticing little things. Grace Harper walking slower, her ankle healing, her phone buzzing, and her expression shifting whenever she read certain messages. Sometimes she looked at me with a warmth I couldn't explain. Other times, she seemed to put up walls. I started talking about her with my friend Jake Ellis, the kind of guy who laughs too loud and never keeps his opinions to himself. When I told him about Grace Harper, he smirked. "So, you've got a crush on the older neighbor. Classic. Invite her over for dinner. Women like that don't want small talk. They want to feel alive again." He made it sound simple, but nothing about Grace Harper felt simple. One evening, I brought groceries to her door. An excuse really, but it worked. She looked surprised, then amused when I held up a bag of pasta and sauce. "Dinner?" I asked, my voice more nervous than I wanted. She hesitated, then stepped aside. That night, over bowls of spaghetti, we laughed more than I expected. She teased me for burning the garlic bread. I teased her for being bossy about the recipe. For a while, it felt normal, almost too normal, like we were two friends who had known each other for years. But under the surface, I sensed something unspoken pulling her back. After dinner, as I helped clear the table, she suddenly grew quiet. Her hand rested on a glass, her eyes distant. "You shouldn't get too close," she whispered. I froze. She looked at me, her expression conflicted. Part warning, part plea. Before I could respond, her phone lit up on the counter. A name flashed on the screen. Evan Brooks. She grabbed it quickly, stepping into another room. Through the half-closed door, I heard her voice, firm but trembling. "Stop calling me. You don't control me anymore." I stood in her kitchen, heart racing, trying to piece it together. That man from before, the one who had looked at me like I didn't belong. He wasn't just some stranger. He was her past. And from the sound of it, he wasn't willing to let go. When she returned, she forced a smile as if nothing had happened. But I could still hear her words echoing in my head. "You shouldn't get too close." And yet, I already was. I thought I could keep my distance, convinced myself that Grace Harper's warning was enough to slow me down. But the truth is, every time I saw her, watering her garden, walking carefully down the steps with her healing ankle, or simply closing the curtains at night, I felt myself pulled in deeper. It didn't take long before the whispers started. Neighbors are good at noticing things they shouldn't. People saw me carrying groceries to her door, fixing the lock on her porch, walking her dog when her ankle was too sore. It didn't matter that I was just helping. To them, it was a story, and stories spread fast. Jake Ellis, my friend, laughed when I told him. "So what? Let them talk. If she's worth it, you'll survive a little gossip." Easy for him to say. For Grace Harper, it wasn't that simple. She lived under a sharper microscope. People remembered her marriage, her loss, and the man who still hung around like a shadow. One evening, I found her sitting on her porch, staring at the sky. She looked restless, her phone beside her like a silent threat. I sat next to her without asking. For a while, we didn't speak. Then she whispered, "I used to think the hardest thing in life was losing someone, but sometimes it's harder letting someone new in." I didn't know what to say, so I told her the truth. "You don't have to do it all at once. You don't even have to let me in completely. Just don't shut me out." Her eyes glistened, and for a moment, She reached for my hand. It was a small gesture, but it carried more weight than any sentence I could have spoken. That fragile moment shattered when headlights cut across the street. Car pulled up and out stepped Evan Brooks. He walked straight toward the porch. His presence heavy, his expression tight with anger. "So it's true," he said, his voice low but sharp. "You've got some boy hanging around now." I stood quickly, my heart pounding. "I'm not." But Grace Harper stopped me, her voice firm. "Evan Brooks, leave." He ignored her, stepping closer, his eyes fixed on me. "You think this is a game? You think she needs someone like you? She doesn't need a kid chasing fairy tales. She needs someone who knows how the world works." Every word felt like a punch. I wanted to shout back to tell him he was wrong, but the look in Grace Harper's eyes stopped me. She wasn't afraid for herself. She was afraid for me. Finally, she raised her voice. "Enough. You don't get to decide who I see." Evan Brooks's jaw clenched. He glared at me one last time before walking away, muttering, "You'll regret this." When his car disappeared, silence hung between us. I felt the sting of his words, but what cut deeper was Grace Harper's trembling. She turned to me, her voice breaking. "You see now why I said you shouldn't get close. He won't let this go." I wanted to tell her I didn't care, that I was ready to face whatever came. But she looked so fragile in that moment, her strength stripped away, that I just sat beside her, letting her lean against me. That night, in the dim porch light, she whispered something I'll never forget. I thought my heart was done. I thought I couldn't feel this again. "But you—" She stopped as if the words frightened her. I held my breath, waiting, but she shook her head, smiling sadly. "You should go home." I walked back across the street, my chest heavy with everything unsaid. The gossip, Evan Brooks's threats, Grace Harper's fear. It all pressed down on me. But none of it was enough to erase the memory of her hand in mine or the way her voice had cracked when she almost confessed, because in that moment, I knew whatever this was between us, it wasn't one-sided. I thought the hardest part would be facing Evan Brooks, but I was wrong. The hardest part was facing everyone else. The whispers in the neighborhood grew louder. At the grocery store, I caught two women staring at us, their voices dropping when Grace Harper reached for a carton of milk. At work, Jake Ellis teased me. At first, with his usual grin, then with genuine concern. "Man, you're playing with fire. People are talking. Your parents will hear. Your professors will hear. You really ready for all that?" I laughed it off. But when I got home that night, my phone buzzed. It was my mom. She never called this late. Her voice was steady but worried. "Liam Carter, honey, people are saying things about you and that woman across the street. She's older. She's been through things. Are you sure this is what you want?" Her words stung because they echoed my own doubts. But when I looked out the window and saw Grace Harper closing her curtains, moving slowly, her shoulders heavy, I knew the answer. Yes, I wanted this no matter how complicated it was. The next evening I went to see her. She was sitting in her living room, a book open but unread in her lap. I told her what people were saying about my mom's call, about the looks and the whispers. I expected her to laugh it off or tell me not to care. Instead, her eyes filled with guilt. "You shouldn't have to carry this," she whispered. "You're too young to be dragged into my mess." "It's not a mess," I argued. "It's life, and I want to be part of it with you." She shook her head, her hands trembling as she set the book aside. "You don't understand. Evan Brooks isn't just some bitter ex. He knows how to hurt people. He knows how to make them pay. If you stay close to me, you'll be his next target. I won't let that happen." Her voice cracked on those last words, and for the first time, I saw fear win over her strength. She stood, pacing, then turned to me with eyes that begged me to leave. "Go, Liam Carter. Please, for your own sake." I wanted to fight back, to refuse, but the way she said it left me frozen. It wasn't rejection, it was sacrifice. She was pushing me away, not because she didn't feel anything, but because she felt too much. I left her house that night in silence, my chest burning. Across the street, the world looked the same. The same cracked sidewalk, the same street light buzzing overhead, but everything felt broken. Jake Ellis found me later at the bar, nursing a drink I didn't want. "She ended it?" he asked. I nodded. The words stuck in my throat. For once, he didn't laugh. He clapped a hand on my shoulder and said, "Then don't let her. If she matters to you, don't let her decide for both of you." I barely slept. Her voice replayed in my head over and over. "Go, Liam Carter. Please, for your own sake." Every word carried the weight of her love hidden beneath the fear. The next morning, I saw her outside tending to her flowers. Her smile forced when she noticed me. We waved like polite neighbors. Nothing more. But I could see it in her eyes. The battle she was fighting inside. I knew then this wasn't the end. Couldn't be. Because sometimes love isn't about walking away when things get hard. Sometimes it's about standing firm when the whole world tells you to let go. And if I had to prove that to her and to everyone else, I would. For a few days, I tried to live with the silence. Grace Harper and I went back to being nothing more than neighbors who exchanged polite waves. She hid behind her garden. I hid behind my closed blinds. But the truth gnawed at me every waking moment. I couldn't stop replaying the night she asked me to go. The way her voice trembled with something that felt like love disguised as fear. Jake Ellis wouldn't let me sink into it. He cornered me at work, his arms crossed. "So that's it," she says. "Go and you just roll over. That's not the guy I know. If you want her, fight for her. If you don't, then stop torturing yourself." His words hit me harder than I expected. That night, staring at the ceiling in my small apartment, I realized he was right. If I gave up, it wouldn't be because I didn't love her. It would be because I was afraid. And fear was exactly what Evan Brooks wanted. The next evening, I saw Evan Brooks's car parked outside her house. My chest tightened, but my feet carried me across the street before doubt could stop me. I knocked once, then pushed the door open when I heard raised voices inside. Grace Harper stood near the fireplace, her arms crossed, her face pale. Evan Brooks towered over her, his voice sharp and bitter. "You think this boy can protect you? You think he's a man? He'll leave you the second he realizes what a burden you are." I stepped inside. "You're wrong." Both of them turned. Grace Harper's eyes widened, fear flashing across her face. Evan Brooks's expression twisted into a smirk. Look who finally found his courage. I took a breath. My fists clenched at my sides, but my voice steady. "I may not have your money or your years, but I know what I want. And I'm not walking away just because you say I should." Evan Brooks laughed a low, bitter sound. "You don't understand, kid. She's mine. Always has been." Grace Harper's voice broke as she finally shouted, "I'm not yours. Not anymore." Her hands trembled, but her eyes burned with a strength I hadn't seen before. "You lost me the moment you chose control over love." For a moment, Evan Brooks stood frozen, anger flickering in his eyes. Then he muttered something under his breath, turned on his heel, and slammed the door behind him. Silence filled the room, heavy and raw. Grace Harper collapsed into the chair, her head in her hands. I walked over slowly, kneeling beside her. "You don't have to fight him alone anymore," I whispered. She looked at me, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Liam Carter, you don't understand what this will cost you. The gossip, the judgment, your future." I shook my head. "None of that matters if I don't have this. If I don't have you." For the first time, she let the walls fall completely. She reached for my face, her touch trembling but certain. "It's because of you," she whispered. The same words she had spoken on that trail weeks ago. Only now I understood. "It's because of you I can breathe again. I can live again." I pulled her into my arms, and for a long moment, we just stayed there, holding on as if the world outside didn't exist. The gossip wouldn't stop overnight. Evan Brooks wouldn't vanish from our lives completely. But none of that mattered anymore because love isn't about choosing the easy path. It's about choosing each other even when everything around you tries to tear you apart. And I knew then without a single doubt that I'd choose her again and again.